MKMVA has confirmed that its meeting with the ANC's national leadership on the disbandment of the organization has collapsed. The veterans have expressed disappointment at ANC chairperson Gwede Mantashe's handling of that meeting. The organization has vowed to not disband itself, despite the order given by the ANC.
The meeting did not go well, unfortunately, because the national chair of the African National Congress, Comrade Gwede Mantashe, decided to squash any interaction and any questioning from the side of the national office bearers of MKMVA about this very serious deviation from the unitary process that we as Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association have been involved in since the ANC's National Elective Conference in 2017. You will recall that the ANC decided at that conference that there must be a unitary process in order to bring all members of Umkhonto we Sizwe together. We have decided, after proper consultation with our National Executive Committee, to fully participate in that process, and we did so under the auspices of the Peace and Stability Subcommittee chaired by Comrade Tony Ngeni. The MK National Council unilaterally and abruptly decided to withdraw from that process, while we had diligently continued to participate and to try and make the unitary process work.
All right, let's continue then with that story. Our politics editor Bungalwa joins me in studio. Political analyst Professor Lesiba Teffo of the University of South Africa, also part of the conversation tonight. Prof, let me begin with you. There's very little surprise in terms of how that meeting actually unfolded. It seemed from the day that it was public knowledge that there was this plan to disband the MKMVA, it received opposition from then.
Nothing surprising about it, but most importantly for me, I am glad that it collapsed, because it will bring into focus the discussion that South Africans are trying to avoid. It is not only the MK or the ANC that fought for the liberation of this country. You have APLA, the military wing of PAC. We have ZANDLA, the military wing of AZAPO, perhaps and many others that I may not recall right away. But the treatment hasn't been even. The benefits and the recognition haven't been even or impartial. But above all, there are many who advance the struggle for liberation more than those who were in exile. The UDF, the Youth Leaguers of 1976, and many of them are languishing in poverty, limbs lost, maimed and otherwise. My heart goes to those people. They also made a contribution. Yes, ANC contributed, but let's be fair and honest enough. It was not the only organization, and it gets an undue emphasis and recognition at the expense of others. Yes, I don't undermine the contribution, but equally, now they are in government, let them be magnanimous enough to recognize others.
The issue that you're raising, Professor Teffo, is an important one, and you know, I think it's part of the same conversation, but can also be had separately, in the sense that the divisions that we're seeing, even within the ANC, about who is the right grouping to be recognized as being part of the military veterans, is part of the broader question that society is also grappling with today, over who are the veterans that are celebrated, that receive, as you're saying, some kind of benefit, and who are those that have been completely excluded from those processes.
Yeah, that for me is a reductionist approach that plays into the factional politics of the ANC. Because in as much as X can claim to have been in exile and contributed, so will Mapatsu. So that for me is neither here nor there. It is about their factional battles fighting for the soul of the ANC. And hence I said, I don't want to belabor that bit. I would rather bring to the fore the question that society is trying to avoid. Confront the reality that many people contributed to the advancement of the liberation struggle, and many are languishing. And I'm saying, maybe I'm abusing the platform to say there are many more out there. That at least Ramaphosa and them, including Gwete, they should also have said, but there are others as well, let's bring them on board. And then I'm just saying to myself, they are there, why wouldn't they say, let's dissolve both MKs and come up with something new? Possibly that might have been acceptable to both, especially to the Mapaso faction.
Sibungalwa, let me bring you in here and perhaps your own reflections then on the collapse of this meeting.
Look, I think there were some mistakes that the ANC leadership made in leading to this meeting. Because remember, initially, the statement that was read out by the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Jesse Duarte, said that the NWC, or rather the ANC leadership, had decided that the MKMVA should consider where they were given an option, and that was partially part of the criticism. And I think that the ANC leadership realized that mistake. Hence, coming into this meeting, they actually laid down the law where the president speaks and announces that they have been disbanded as a structure, and perhaps that's why Gwede treated this meeting that way, where it is not a discussion, but rather it is an instruction from the governing party. But I think more than anything, what this point is actually quite sad when you look at it, because the levels of divisions in the ANC, I think they're unprecedented. And perhaps, as Professor Teffo is saying, it's for a good reason. And I think that things have come to a head where it's a matter of it's either the ANC goes in one direction or the other. And perhaps the divisions and the factions have been there for such a long time, to a point where the party is crippled from actually doing the business of governing. So it may not be a bad thing, actually, that you are saying this, but it must be remembered that these are veterans, these are people, these are elders, these are people that young people ought to look up to. And given the culture and the nature of the ANC, which is an organization which normally defers to the elders when in times of crisis, and then it would be the elders who step in. The fact that you have military veterans defying the ANC, saying that they will not disband, actually, I think it is, if anything, underlines the state of affairs or how broken the ANC is. I think it is that, because normally we get that kind of, for a lack of a better word, delinquency from young people, which is associated with the Youth League. And it would be expected that at the very least, senior leaders and those who had been in exile and others who had been inside as members of MK would actually find a way to unite without being forced to do so. Because going back to 2012 conference of the ANC had some resolutions about how the welfare of military veterans need to be taken seriously. There are serious issues that relate to military veterans that are now in the periphery, while the leadership of the MKMVA and the MK Council are squabbling.
Professor Teffo is raising a point that I think goes beyond just the current structures of veterans within the ANC, about who are the people that contributed to the liberation struggle, and who amongst those, effectively the conversation of who is being left out of this conversation, and that this could well be an opportunity to look for a much broader solution that includes broad South Africa and is not just limited to those who affiliate or associate with the ANC. Is that something that is plausible in terms of the thinking of where the MKMVA and its rival structure in the ANC is right now?
Look, Professor Teffo raises a very good thing about the plight of other military veterans. But I think the ANC as an organization has a responsibility, first and foremost, to take care of its own military veterans. And also, in terms of having a structure within the ANC that looks after MK members, I think that's fine. Because the Military Veterans Act and the Military Veterans Department is meant to take care of the welfare of the former members of the SADF and also the former members of liberation movements, including APLA, that is associated with the PAC, and other such formations. So, and the Act is quite clear in terms of when those structures demobilized, in terms of who qualifies as a military veteran, but whether the government is doing its bit to take care of the needs of those veterans, that's another story altogether.
Professor Teffo, let me bring you in here and talk about just the suggestion, of course, that you've put on the table around a way in which the veterans could also be approaching this matter. Do you see that being plausible right now, given how deep the tensions, even just within the different groupings in the ANC, seem to run?
For me, sometimes you need visionaries. People who can look beyond today in an attempt to build the society our founding fathers were about, the society that the Constitution is about, and the values that undergird the Constitution, namely reconciliation, social cohesion, and nation building. Yes, I hear what the colleague says, but as he goes on, he also almost nullifies what he's saying, because the reality is, focus is on the MK veterans, perhaps rightly so. And I'll tell you, simply because, as a philosopher and historian, I admit, history is written by the victors and not the vanquished. One day somebody will come into the fore, into the State House, will write another history in the name of correcting yesterday's history that was partisan. Things didn't go well. If you want to take me back, they should have tried to sit together as per the mandate given in 2017 to negotiate and negotiate and negotiate. But for now, there is a sense that they want to dilute one faction at the expense of another, to strengthen one at the expense of another. And that's why they go there with predetermined and inflexible positions. And unfortunately, the chairperson was also not helpful. He spoke almost like a headmaster dictating to the boys in short pants.
Professor Teffo, in your view, what are the likely outcomes then on this particular story going forward?
Whatever they do, they must never forget or lose sight of the fact that they are charged with the responsibility of taking care of the matter of the state. And they are consumed by internal wranglings and factions, and the country suffers in the process. I wish the president and those closest to him may remind him that rather lose your party but save the country. Posterity will look at your face, at your grave with a smile than to spit on it. The ANC has done its bit, but surely it cannot be about them at the expense of the country and the nation.
All right, political analyst there, Professor Lesiba Teffo, and of course our politics editor, Spungalwa, in studio. We're going to leave it there for tonight.